All right, everyone, welcome back to Content That Grows podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the shift to a marketing-led buyer's journey. And I'm joined today with Pius Chan of Lumen5. How's it going, Pius?
Hey, Nate, how are you? Good to be here.
Yeah, great. Excited to have you. So a little bit more about him. Pius is the head of growth at Lumen5. He's leading the company's go-to-market strategy and managing marketing, sales, and customer experience teams. With 22 years of experience in B2B tech, he brings a unique perspective on the workings of large enterprises and startups and valuable insights into the buyer's journey. So, it's a great overview, and I think that's an exciting kind of perspective that you have across multiple departments to really be able to dig into this topic today. So I would love to just kind of get started and hear from you on like what are some of the key things that you are seeing in the shift away from sales-led go-to-market strategies and moving into sort of more of that marketing-led buyer's journey.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. That was a great intro and great to be here, like I said, and really excited to really talk about this. I think it's been really interesting to be able to be in the forefront of marketing and sales and customers as well in the whole journey within Lumen5. But really some of the main key pieces that we're seeing is this kind of shift away from the buyers being a sales-led function into really a marketing-led function. And I think I see that as a 16-year veteran as a sales rep and an AE in the first years of my career, really looking at the old ways of selling are really no longer that effective. And really because we're starting to see people wanting to buy differently now. And all of that is really just that hold and access to information that was previously held by sales reps in a lot of ways. I mean, I remember when I first started my career, I was selling copiers for Canon, and I had all the information. I had all my brochures. I'd call my competitors to find out about their machines and, kind of the pros and cons. And when I spoke with customers, I had all the information and I had all of the competitive technicalities. I knew what was in the market, and they didn't have that information, right? You fast forward maybe 10 years into the future, you had landing pages, very much one-way information sites or whatnot, like ebooks and blogs. And now it's really two ways, right? People are talking to each other. People are in Slack communities, they're in podcasts here, right? Where people can just dive into all of the things and all of the information out there. So we're seeing people wanting to do their own research and finding out all of the facts and details before they really speak to a vendor. So, I mean, it's nothing new that marketers don't know, but now I'm seeing the shift in like, how can we adapt to this and what can marketers do to adapt to this new buying journey?
Yeah, I think that's a great overview, and certainly agree. I think there's maybe some aspects of marketing that's still a bit of a relic. You mentioned like ebooks and some of those things that like, not the ebook as a format is bad, but like if your approach is to generate the leads to then have sales, go at them exclusively, then I think that's certainly a bit more dated. But even, to your point there, you mentioned like communities, and I think, this was a bit of, I think one of the big shifts there was like, from my perspective, G2, and sites like that, Trust Advisor and things like that are really were meant to sort of like add a ton of that research, empower the buyer, and it did shift away a lot from sales. But in my experience, in the last few times that I've utilized a site like G2, they don't have, at least the categories I was looking in, they don't have pricing listed. But I also know from being in Slack communities for marketing leaders and some of that there's certainly a lot of conversation that's like, hey, this company doesn't have pricing listed. Has anyone worked with this? Can at least give me a ballpark of what you were working with? And so even then there's like ways to capture some of that unknown information without having to touch sales. So I think it's certainly, I agree, like certainly moved a lot in the last, 10, 15 years, but probably a lot of ways that people can continue to be shifting that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want you bring up a good point with G2, and that's exactly how people prefer to do the research, right? Like a lot of ways, B2B has really lagging behind B2C, and with the reviews and like people commenting, leaving stars to see which products work out. I mean, that's how people buy on Amazon. That's really how people buy online. So they want to take that online B2C experience and really move it to B2B now, because it's the same person making those purchases, right? Whether I'm at home on my laptop in my own personal time, or whether I'm at work, and kind of making those decisions, and really seeing that shift in B2B companies trying to adapt that review stage and informational stage now too.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I've also seen some stuff about like customer led and community led, and I'd love to just kind of hear how you think about some of the differences between marketing led versus customer or community led. Like, do you think there's overlap? Do you think they're very different? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think they're very similar, if not the same. Really, just looking at two different lenses of who you are at the time, right? If you're a customer, it's very much customer led, because when I'm looking at it from my perspective, if I'm a customer, I want to be able to go out there and search for the things that I need, search for the information I need, search for the competitive intelligence that I need, and I need it to all be there wherever I search for it. And sometimes when I'm not searching for it and it pops up on my feed, it's something that I'm interested in seeing. So from a customer side, I feel like it's customer led, because I'm driving this information. I'm driving the need for like what I'm looking for, what I'm searching for. But when you switch it around and you look at marketing led, now as a marketer, I need to be the one that's creating this content that's helpful to my customers and putting it in the channels that they're seeing and they're frequenting. So from a marketer side, I'm very much giving the customer the information they need to make the decision. So when I look at a customer led buying model now, it's very much the same as a marketing led buyer's journey. But when you look at it from a marketing led buyer's journey, that means that the vendor themselves have the ability to make that change, to do something about it, right? As a marketer, as a vendor, I can choose to put information out there that's helpful, that drives the kind of decisions that I want my customers to be making, but also allowing the customer to find this information. So I think it's the same, two different sides of the coin for where you're looking at. But when we look at it from a marketing-led buyer's journey, then the vendor has some control in terms of what they want to put out there and what they want their customers to see.
Yeah. I agree. And I think the community-led aspect, I very much believe in. I mean, seen the power of it in terms of being able to tap into some communities for advice, feedback, and getting kind of like a short list of options. And we've certainly benefited from communities and being recommended in them and getting new clients ourselves from them. And so I definitely view that, but I don't, I think it's a piece of the puzzle. And to your point, like there's still the marketing led aspect. Like I can't fathom only getting feedback from someone in a community and then just going for it without like just straight to sign up, without even looking at the website and considering some of the other factors, understanding better how it works, reading content. Like I think there are still some pieces, but from my perspective, the community led aspect seems like just a piece of the puzzle. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that piece as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then when we look at the buyer's journey, right, there's the standard stages with awareness, consideration, and getting to the purchase stage. And I think when you look at the different type of content or different types of draw for people at different mindsets really comes into play. So creating that purposeful content for this person during that type of their journey. So maybe community-led in the very beginning is something that spurs something for me, right? Like when in my conversations with buyers, there's really much three reasons that buyers buy that create that catalyst for them buying, which is pain-based, that I have pain in my process that I need fixed; disruption-based, which is that I was introduced to a new way of doing things that'll help me do my business better that I didn't think about before; and the third is FOMO-based. This is what I'm seeing everyone else doing that I want to get caught up on too. And in that community function, community marketing aspect, I think that really plays off in the awareness stage, making me aware that, oh, there's this issue that I could be, using this other solution to solve. And that's really disruption or FOMO based. And then as I move down the journey into this consideration piece, I'm like, okay, now that I realize I have this problem I want to solve, Now I go to the company website. Now I learn more about what they actually do and tying the solutions back. So, and then I speak to other friends or colleagues that have used that product or a company, for example. And by the time I actually reach the vendor, I'm like 85% sold. They're on my list. They're on my short list. I'm talking to them now to really tie the pieces together to be able to customize a solution for me based on what they can do. So, you know, a lot of that was done by sales in the past, that whole journey forward. But now it's really up to marketing and the content that you put out there that can drive people to your sales team eventually.
Yeah, great. And so shifting a little bit, so Lumen5 does a lot around like video content and enabling people in that area. I'd love to kind of shift a little bit and just kind of get some of your thoughts on what are some of the content strategies, content formats that seem, from your perspective, are best supporting the marketing-led motion?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think right now the marketing-led function is really around creating impactful and purposeful content, right? And you know this amazingly well with your past and tenure, but creating that content at all different stages to be able to attract the person who's seeing your content into your funnel is key. And you know, I think before, you know, there was really one way to consume information, or at least limited ways, right? The blog was the main piece, the written word was the main piece. Right. Now you've expanded to audio, like podcasts, and a lot of people get their information from listening to podcasts and listening to subject matter experts talk about that thing that they want to learn about. Video is another powerful way, right? And you talk about repurposing content a lot and creating that evergreen piece that can spur off like 20, 30 different types of content, short form here, social there, right? And when you look at video in terms of how people can use video in terms of long form, short form, you can take the audio function of it, and you can take the text transcript of a video and create a ton of different content for it. But then when you take the content for it, we really want to repurpose it with purpose, right? So if I'm taking that same piece of content and I'm putting it on LinkedIn, for example, versus TikTok, it's a very different audience. Or it might be the same audience, but my mindset when I'm on LinkedIn or TikTok is very different. So playing to that mindset while keeping the overall structure or skeleton of that content is really important. So what we're doing is we're trying to obviously repurpose a lot of our content in video form, short form, but making sure to be aware of our buyers' mindset during the different times that they're on different platforms and what they would be thinking about. And it's really feeding them that helpful information that'll help them make the decisions that they want to make.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like that there's, it's easy to kind of put together a framework or, this checklist or whatever that's sort of like, for every blog post, we're going to do X, Y, Z, or for every podcast episode, we're going to turn it into all these different things. And, just being mindful of like what actually should be cut up and into what format. And we've certainly talked a bit about that and like kind of matching the format to the message and then the channel to the format, like making sure that these things kind of correspond and will hit people in the right way. So I think you made a good point there. I think the other thing there is with, respect to that, I think that to your point earlier on like communities and just the different ways, I think we've certainly seen that over the last couple of years, the shift that there is a lot more awareness happening and people sort of becoming followers of someone before they even become a customer on LinkedIn and Twitter and whatnot, because of a lot of this shift into putting the value out. So like you said before, like sales led, they held all the information. And back then it probably would have felt ridiculous to be like, we're going to actually take all of our most valuable information and just post it on social and other stuff every day. But that shift has happened, and I think that's another way that marketing sort of followed with the content and really needing to do that. And it's interesting because it feels like everyone's done it, but then there's still, come across companies every single day, SaaS companies, whether they're newer with smaller budgets or large established SaaS companies that just still aren't actually doing anything in terms of like extensive repurposing and like CEOs posting on social and some of that stuff. Where do you have any thoughts on kind of like where it goes from here, or kind of like what aspects of that are picking up momentum? Obviously, like LinkedIn text posts have been around for quite a while, and then kind of like TikTok's a bit newer, maybe a bit of cross posting, so from your perspective and in the areas that you're seeing a lot from Lumen5, just kind of curious if you have any thoughts on kind of what's picking up steam.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's a great question. I think that really depends on your audience and what kind of product that you have, right? I mean, if you're a really in-depth, deep product that only sells to executives and very technical or whatnot, mechanical, for example, or engineering, TikTok isn't probably the place to go. But if you're selling to marketers and your audience is mostly marketers, then it really depends on that function. But when you bring up a good point with thought leaders and whatnot, and in the past, I mean, you couldn't get access to these folks who had these these strategies and teachings and whatnot. But now you're seeing it everywhere, right? Like everyone's sharing their expertise and sharing what makes their business tick. But in a lot of ways, I think if you sell a product and your product enables that strategy, that's an amazing way to be able to sell your product. Is like share the strategy. You can get close with the strategy, but you can't get all the way unless you have the product as well. I see a lot of great companies really doing that and sharing that expertise where they get their customer, majority of the way in that beginning stages. And then these customers get bought into that strategy because it really works, and they see the benefits of that. And then they have to purchase the product to make it the rest of the way there. By the time they do, they're happy customers, right? And they've created this lifelong partnership. And I think really, tying it back to revenue is a big piece also. What we're doing with our content and being able to give away this strategy is being able to attribute it back to eventual purchase, to who's actually using our strategies to find success, how much success are they using, and then how much of those are actually translating into future sales.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, so one more question to kind of wrap up this segment around kind of the marketing-led buyer journey. If a company, someone listening, is like still pretty heavily sales-led, and that doesn't mean that like their potential customers are that way, like they're finding information elsewhere and maybe going with competitors, but in terms of within the company and the stuff they're controlling and the motion that they have, what are some of the steps you think they could take to get started and kind of moving more towards marketing led?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the biggest piece right now is really for sales teams and marketing teams to work very, very closely together. And the collaboration, and we see this often, right? And this is something that's been happening for a long time, where sales is managing and working in their own silos, and same with marketing. They have different KPIs, different measurements of success, and they clash and whatnot. So a lot of that has to be removed, where sales folks need to think like marketers, and sales folks or need to nurture these customers to the point where they're ready to buy. And, to your point earlier, not just get an email and try to sell everybody because they downloaded an ebook somewhere like 3 years ago. And marketers as well, right? Marketers need to start thinking more like sales folks, where instead of going one to many, they need to create that experience, that personalized, impactful experience where it feels like it's one-to-one. And sales does that very well, right? Sales very much tailors this experience for the customer because they can based on their function. But now marketing needs to figure out a way to be able to deliver that one-to-one experience, but in a one-to-many function and format, while hitting the different types of buyers that you have, different purchasers that you have. And to the last point, right now in 2023, we're seeing the buying cycle change, where no one buyer wants to be that one person that says, I'm going to buy this thing, and then see it fail. So we're continuously coming across committees now. The procurement cycle is much longer than it was last year, and it will continue to be as companies are more wary about their finances. So now when we're looking at marketing, creating that content that sells their buyer, they also now need to sell the CEO, the CFO, the purchasing team, the IT team, for example. So we need to be able to tell good stories to each of these functions that that hits their why for buying the software. So that's going to be more and more important for marketing as we go forward.
Yep, that's great. Awesome. Anything else you want to add that I didn't ask you about or didn't cover on that topic?
Oh no, that was fully extensive for there. Yeah.
Okay, right on.
Sweet.
Cool. All right. So we'll move over into kind of the final four section. So the first question is just like, what's a recent success or learning that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Maybe it's not a recent success, but it's definitely a learning, and it's really nothing new, but it's really more of a lifelong learning thing that you'll never really be good at anything at your first try. And, looking at podcasting, for example, or content creation, right? Writing and creativity, there's a lot of things that we need to continue to work on and continue to practice on to make it good. And I think once you realize that nothing is ever good when you first try it, you'll move along quicker. And that kind of came up when one of my colleagues was just saying recently that just when you think you got it, the world changes. And we've seen it recently with AI, and that's really disrupted a lot of marketers who think they have this rhythm going on, and all of a sudden AI comes and changes everything in terms of how they work. And they'll need to adapt again. I think marketing itself hasn't changed, but when you look at the tool set and the technology, and more specifically the buyers that we're selling into now, the generational changes in maturity of these folks now, all that's changed. So just when you think the old playbook works, it flips around and you have to adapt it. And I think that's something that is continuous.
Yeah, that's great. Your comment that like you aren't going to be great at something on the first try, generally totally agree. I think that's great. It reminded me though, because your example of podcast, we were looking at the stats the other day, and we noticed that it counts kind of like listeners and downloads together in the platform we use, and 50% of our like all time listens and downloads have actually come in like the last 90 days, and we've been doing it for 18 months. So it was
That's
like
amazing.
just like really starting to kind of pick up some of the areas and like getting some distribution and like getting mentioned in other places and stuff. That's really noticed that. And so certainly,
that's amazing. Even when you're writing a blog. Right. Like if you're writing a blog, you have one post, no one's going to read it. But if you have 50 posts, that's when it starts picking up. So congrats, Nate. That's awesome.
Yeah, starts building. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that just came to mind because, podcasting was certainly a bit more foreign to me than blog content and stuff like that when we started. And so thankfully we just took a long-term view on it and didn't try to measure the success in a pilot or anything like that, because it would have gotten killed early. But yeah, that's great advice for sure. Second, for your company, for Lumen5, like what role does content play in your overall strategy?
Yeah, content is huge, and content is our overall strategy in marketing overall. Like we're really trying to put out helpful content and really kind of sharing who we are and what we do, what we stand for, and how we can help. A lot of our content is around helping marketers create better videos, create better content, repurposing content, and we really talk about what we're hearing from other marketers to help other marketers understand that we're not alone in any of the problems we face. And I think that's been a huge shift in the content in marketing as well over the last maybe 5 years, 10 years, maybe not so much 10, but really helping all of us understand that we're really just trying to figure this thing out. And as soon as one thing adapts and changes, we're all trying to figure it out too. And I really love this community of selling to marketers and marketing to marketers, because the content we put out there resonates and we learn from each other as well. So the content that Lumen5 puts out is very much what we've been hearing from other marketers, and kind of helping them create the type of content that they want to create as well. So again, going back to my point where earlier we were helping marketers create amazing video to the point where they might need Lumen5 and they might need a tool like ours to carry on the rest of the way. But even without our product and with our tool set, we give a lot of amazing content and hopefully helpful content out there that helps marketers do their jobs a lot easier.
Yep. Great. So this might be interesting and sort of unique for you, but because of the fact that you oversee marketing, sales, and customer success. But like, how does Lumen5 define success for you and your team? So I guess I'll caveat that perhaps because you also oversee sales, revenue is probably the obvious one. So maybe, in addition to that, what else you might share?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, revenue is definitely a big portion of that, obviously, but we want to drive the right kind of revenue, right? And we want to drive the right type of growth. I think how we achieve growth is really important to us fundamentally. We want the right type of growth, long-term, sustainable, with great customers who are happy to work with us. I think when we look at success for our company is really being able to help our customers do the thing that they wanted to do when they first came to us. And whether they're paying customers or free customers, we have millions of free users that are on our platform. We want to help them achieve whatever that is that they came to us for as well. And that's really from our leadership and our founders. I think when they first started the company, they tried to make videos as well and realized how hard it was and with the tools out there. I come from an agency background as well and understanding how not easy it is to make videos. And, to your days of social, it wasn't easy back then as well in terms of how companies wanted to scale social, right? So now companies are trying to scale video. So, yeah, I think for us, success is just really... We have a channel in Slack called Warm Fuzzies, and we all share the happy customer stories that we see from there. And that's one of all of our favorite channels. And I think personally that's really a good way for us to drive success.
Yeah, that's great. All right. And then lastly, what's your least favorite marketing conversation that's happening in social channels right now and why?
Oh, this one's a fun one. Yeah, I was listening to some of your shows earlier too, and I think I caught some of these comments as well. It's really interesting, but it's really, like I said, it's more of a love and hate between AI and repurposing content right now. And I love those two things, and I think done right, it's so powerful, right? Done right, when we talk about it right and the right kind of conversations is great. But like you and many marketers out there are seeing too, I think there's a lot of maybe commodity content that just kind of reached the level, the surface of it all. And we all know there's so much deeper space to go. So I think around AI and repurposing content, those two we can definitely do a lot better to go deeper and find out a lot more about them and share that with each other.
Yeah, I agree. And yes, as you pointed out, we've talked a bit already about how on some other episodes about how we feel about the hysteria around some of it, but yeah, I think there's some good things. I've seen some stuff more recently that people are being very open about, like, here's how I'm creating 500 posts in a single day, like blog posts in a single day via ChatGPT. And then, some of the people in the comments are like, just, tearing them to shreds. And other people are basically like, let us know how it goes. Like, I don't think it's gonna be good, but let us know, And so I think there's some interesting stuff that's like, people are almost just like willing to fail publicly and like learn publicly, along the way. And so that stuff to me is a little more palatable than like, the person who's all of a sudden an expert when, they just started checking it out 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, I saw this. This meme.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, sorry. I saw this meme that was pretty funny the other day. That was like a job description. I think it was from Brooklyn Ash, but he's like, job description must have 5 years ChatGPT experience. And all of a sudden, in any job postings for 2023, right? Sure.
Yeah. Exactly. I was gonna say the absolute worst. That's just like an immediate scroll past for me is. There's still an alarming number of people who call it ChatGBT. So it's not even like the right acronym. And so that feels alarming that maybe you're not even using the tool. So there's some red flags there, but Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. Pius, I guess you want to share how others can find you and connect with you. It'd be great to have you do that real quick.
Yeah, sure. I'm on LinkedIn at Pius Chan, so you can find me there under Lumen5.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Yeah, well, check out Lumen5, and then for anything else, content that grows, you can find that at 10speed.io/podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe for us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Pius.
Thanks, Nate.